I want you to picture something for a second. Think about one of the most famous optical illusions in the world. You've probably seen it in a psychology textbook or floating around the internet.
Right, the one that's a simple, really high contrast image.
Exactly. If you look at it one way, you see the silhouette of a black vase. But then, if your brain shifts focus just a fraction,
The vase just disappears.
yeah, and suddenly you're looking at two white faces in profile, staring right at each other. You know the exact one I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. The classic Rubin vase. It's a brilliant demonstration of how our visual perception can flip entirely just based on what we decide is the foreground and, what fades into the background.
Right. Now, what if I told you that the exact way your brain processes that black face and those two white faces, that specific visual optical trick, is actually the hidden blueprint for how you construct everyday sentences?
I mean, it sounds almost like a magic trick.
It really does.
But it's actually the foundational premise of the material we're pulling apart today. We're really looking at a complete paradigm shift in how we understand human communication.
We've got a fascinating stack of lecture notes today for this deep dive, all unpacking cognitive linguistics. And our mission is to take these incredibly dense academic concepts and, well, pull out the real aha moments for you.
Because there are a lot of them.
There are. We're going to discover how the language you use every single day isn't just like a random set of rules invented by old grammarians. It's a direct, literal window into your mind and your physical experience in the world. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's get into it.
To really grasp what cognitive linguistics is doing, we have to look at the massive intellectual rebellion it sparked back in the 1970s.
Right. And to understand why that rebellion happened, you really have to imagine the academic landscape of the mid-20th century. There was this profound dissatisfaction with the status quo.
Because at the time, there was this dominant structural paradigm, right?
Exactly. Specifically, generative grammar. It treated language as a highly formal, almost self-contained mathematical system.
Like a strict, joyless equation. You plug in a noun, you carry the verb, you get a sentence.
That's a great way to put it.
It basically treated the human brain like a cold calculator.
And honestly, you could see why that happened. We were just entering the dawn of the computer age. There was this huge temptation to look at the human mind as a machine.
Like we're just hardware running discrete software programs.
Exactly. So generative grammar viewed language as this isolated module in the brain, completely separate from emotion, physical sensation, or general psychology.
Wow.
But then the 1970s roll around, and a new wave of thinkers looks at that mathematical model and realizes, wait, it completely ignores the human element.
Which makes total sense. I mean, it's like realizing that cooking isn't just about blindly following a written algorithm.
Right.
To really master cooking, you have to understand the chemistry of heat, the biology of the human tongue, the, cultural history of the ingredients.
That's a perfect analogy. And cognitive linguistics essentially did that for language. It merged with cognitive psychology, philosophy, artificial intelligence, and neuroscience.
So it was just this massive multidisciplinary shift.
It was. And the core belief here, and this is something for you, the listener, to really keep in mind as we go forward, is that the principles of linguistic structure have to reflect what we know about human cognition from those other sciences.
Because language doesn't just exist in a vacuum.
Exactly. It exists inside a biological organism. It's processed by a physical brain attached to a physical body. Therefore, the rules of grammar must be bound by the rules of human psychology and neurology.
Which brings us right back to our optical illusion, the black vase and the white faces. How does visual psychology dictate grammar?
Well, the lecture notes give us some incredibly concrete examples. They start by looking at how human beings visually process their environment.
Right, because we rely really heavily on figure ground organization.
Yes. It's a basic survival mechanism of visual perception. Say you're walking through a forest. Your brain is evolutionarily hardwired to single out a perceptually prominent figure.
Like a moving animal or something.
Exactly. You separate that moving figure from the static ground, which would be the trees.
Okay, so visually, our brains are wired to pick a hero, the figure, and a background. But how does that jump from, my eyeballs into my sentences?
What's fascinating here is that we apply this exact spatial visual rule to simple linguistic structures. Take a completely basic everyday sentence, something like, the book is on the table.
Okay, a standard locative relation.
When you say that sentence, you aren't just placing words in a row, you are recreating a spatial reality using grammar.
Oh, I see.
In that sentence, the book is conceptualized as the prominent figure, and the table is the ground.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Basic grammar is using the exact same psychological mechanism as staring at an optical illusion.
It really is.
You are shining a mental spotlight on the book, making it the figure, and the table becomes the stage it sits on.
Right.
And if you said the table is under the book, you've just flipped the optical illusion. Now the table is the figure and the book is the background.
Precisely. Grammar is basically just visual psychology wearing a disguise.
That is mind-bending.
It's a profound realization about how deeply our physical bodies influence our abstract thoughts. By observing these patterns, linguists realized they could form hypotheses about the entire conceptual system of the human mind.
Just by looking at how we order our words.
Exactly.
Okay, so if the broad structure of a sentence is essentially a spatial map of our physical environment, we needed to zoom in a bit. What exactly is a single word in this framework?
Well, the notes define individual words as symbols, which is a conventional pairing of form and meaning.
Form and meaning. It seems simple on the surface, right? The form is the physical output. It's the acoustic sound waves hitting your eardrum when someone speaks.
Or the ink on a page when you read.
Right. Or the physical gesture of flat hands and sign language to represent a leg. The physical delivery method is highly categorized and easy to measure.
It is. The form is the easy part.
But I have to push back here. Measuring sound waves is easy, sure. But if we take this holistic psychological view of language, accounting for meaning seems like a total nightmare.
Oh, it gets very messy.
Right. If a word is just a symbol triggering a mental concept, my idea of a leg and your idea of a leg might be totally different. How do we ever actually communicate? Shouldn't language completely break down if meaning is that subjective?
It's a valid challenge, and it's the exact hurdle cognitive linguistics had to address. As you said, meaning is messy. It isn't a strict dictionary definition stored in a little filing cabinet in your brain.
So what is it?
Meanings are active mental constructions. When you hear a word, your brain gathers integrated perceptual information and forms what is called an image schema.
We need to define that because image schema sounds like something a computer programmer uses. What is that in the context of the human brain?
Think of an image schema as a pre-linguistic mental skeleton. Before you even had words as a toddler, you had a physical body. You experienced gravity, right?
Right, constantly falling over.
Exactly. So you developed an UP-down-in schema. You experienced putting food in your mouth or throwing toys in a box. So you developed a containment schema.
The idea of an inside, an outside, and a boundary.
Yes. You learn these schemas through bodily experience long before you can speak.
Oh, wow. So when I say I'm falling in love or feeling down, I'm using a physical gravity schema to explain an abstract emotion.
Precisely. And that answers your pushback about how communication survives subjectivity. Your specific mental picture of a dog might be a golden retriever, and mine might be a poodle.
But the underlying structure is the same.
Exactly. Our underlying schemas, the basic physical concepts of how things exist in space and relate to each other, are grounded in our shared human biology.
That makes total sense. We're both walking around in similar fleshy containers, experiencing the same gravity, so our mental skeletons match even if the specific details don't.
Right. And this perfectly illustrates the interactive function of language mentioned in the notes. There's this great diagram in the text describing a speaker and a hearer.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
The speaker produces the phonetic sound of the word cat. And the moment that sound hits the hearer, it triggers the hearer's own internal image schema.
Bringing a physical cat into their consciousness.
Exactly. The point of communication isn't to transfer a literal object from my brain to yours. The point is to use a specific form to trigger a construction in your mind.
It's like playing a chord on a piano to make another piano string vibrate across the room.
That's a beautiful way to think about it.
But because meaning relies on these internal schemas, our personal messy lives must heavily infect the words we use.
Oh, they absolutely dominate the meaning. To illustrate this, the notes dive into the concept of frames of experience.
Right.
If we view language just as a formal system, a word means what it means. End of story. But in reality, a word is an access node to an entire encyclopedic network of memories and physical reactions.
There's a highly relatable anecdote in the material that just nails this. The author talks about hearing his wife call out his name from another room.
Yes.
But she doesn't just say his name normally. She draws it out. She says, Bartik.
And if language is just math, Bartik simply means the proper noun representing the author.
But the frames of experience tell a totally different story. That single, drawled-out word evokes a massive conceptual substrate.
Oh, definitely.
When he hears that specific tone, it triggers a flood of physical and emotional realities. He knows his wife might be in a bad mood. It might mean she needs him to do a chore.
And, most importantly, his bodily experience tells him that if he fails to respond, his stress levels are going to spike because he'll be in trouble.
Right. The situational context, the relationship between the speaker and the hearer, their shared history, that isn't just extra information tacked onto the word.
According to cognitive linguistics, that context, I, is the meaning.
Think about that in your own life for a second. Think about how much unspoken context you inject into a simple text message.
Oh, text messages are a perfect example.
Like if a friend texts you the word fun, punctuation, the form, the letters, is essentially identical.
But your frames of experience tell you that the period is aggressive.
Exactly. You know they are furious with you. Or think about a heavy sigh. A sigh isn't even a word, but based on your lived experience, you know exactly what that exhalation of air means in a specific context.
It proves that language relies completely on our emotional and physical history.
Which brings us to the sort of philosophical climax of the lecture notes. The fundamental divide between the old guard of generative grammar and the new movement of cognitive linguistics.
It really is a debate about the very nature of human intelligence.
Let's lay out the differences, because it's a stark contrast. The formal approach of generative grammar argued for a modular theory of mind.
Right. They believed that the brain was essentially hardware, and language was a specific, isolated software program running on it.
They treated the lexicon, your vocabulary, and the syntax, the grammatical rules, as completely distinct modules.
In their view, you could study the mechanical rules of syntax without ever needing to understand human emotion, bodily sensation, or visual perception.
But cognitive linguistics completely rejects that. They argue for a non-modular structure of the mind.
Yes, the vocabulary and the grammar rules aren't sitting in separate boxes in your brain. They exist on a continuum.
They're processed by the exact same integrated cognitive system that handles your eyesight, your hearing, and your memories.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, cognitive linguistics draws a very hard line in the sand. It states unequivocally that it is strictly impossible to study language as a formal computational system without taking into account the nature of human bodies and human experience.
You cannot separate the sentence from the flesh and blood of the person speaking it.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? If grammar isn't just an empty mathematical scaffolding holding words together, what is it?
The notes highlight a claim made by the linguist Ronald Langacker, and it might be the most crucial takeaway from this entire exploration. He argues that grammar is meaningful.
Grammar itself carries meaning.
Yes. The rules themselves are imbued with our cognitive reality. Without the meaningfulness of grammar, advanced human language wouldn't exist.
The way we structure our sentences is basically the geometry of human thought.
That's it, exactly.
Because, as we saw with the book on the table, the grammar is just a reflection of how our physical bodies perceive the physical world around us. It's the figure and the ground.
It's the container and the boundary.
We've covered some massive ground today. We started by looking at a simple optical illusion and realized that the way our brains pick out a figure from a background dictates how we build sentences.
Which is incredible to think about.
We broke down the anatomy of a word, moving past the simple sound waves to see how meaning relies on pre-linguistic physical image schemas.
Right. We explored how the simple thought of a cat isn't telepathy, but the triggering of shared mental constructions grounded in human biology.
We looked at the Bartik effect, proving that a single word carries an entire encyclopedia of lived context and emotion.
And finally, we saw how cognitive linguistics tore down the idea of the brain as a cold computer running isolated language software.
Proving instead that language is intimately, undeniably tied to our physical bodies.
It forces a complete paradigm shift in how we view communication. But it also leaves us with a rather profound, almost unsettling implication based on the world we live in today.
Oh, where are we going with this?
Well, let's follow the logic of cognitive linguistics to its ultimate conclusion. The field firmly argues that it is impossible to study language as a computational system without taking into account human bodies and human experience.
Right.
If we accept that as absolute truth, what does this mean for artificial intelligence?
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, we're currently living in an era dominated by large language models. We interact with chatbots daily. But an AI has no physical body.
It has no biological visual perception to distinguish a figure moving against a forest background?
Exactly. It has no feeling of gravity to understand in UPDW and schema. It has no lived experience, no frames of experience, like a husband reacting to his wife's drawn-out tone of voice.
It has no flesh, no stress response, no memories of physical pain or joy.
Nothing.
Mm.
So the question becomes, can a machine ever truly understand the meaning of human language?
Or is it merely mimicking the forms crunching the mathematical probabilities of letters and words?
Without ever actually grasping the deeply human schemas beneath them.
That is incredibly heavy. If Langacker is right, and grammar is essentially a map of human bodily experience, then AI is just drawing a flawless map of a place it has never actually been.
That's exactly it. It can show you the roads, but it doesn't know what the pavement feels like.
Wow. That is definitely something for you to mull over as you go about your day. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the words you use, keep exploring how your mind works, and the next time you look at that black vase, remember, you're not just looking at a picture.
You're looking at the foundation of everything you say.
Take care, everyone.